you ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends. Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Canon with Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
It's Sunday. You know what that means. It's a new episode of the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things comics, all things video games, all things toys, all things movies, all things TV shows, all things music, all things everything on this pop culture phenomena. We're your hosts. I'm Boris, and as always, I'm joined by Phil.
I choose you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Are you saying this to the audience or to me?
Oh, to you, Boris.
Happy Valentine's Day to you, Phil. It's just us two this week on the It's Canon
I know,
podcast.
it's a special couples edition.
Yep. Oh, so what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about Gina Carrano. We're going to be talking about CD Projekt Red, Hack. We're going to be talking about movie theaters and the plan moving forward and how they're opposing any minimum wage increase. We're going to maybe increase and talk about that in the broader sense. We're going to talk about Stadia, and we're going to talk about just how many people are gaming nowadays. So, a bit of a revisit of a few topics that we've talked about, but yeah, that's what's on tap for today, Phil.
That sounds like a spicy episode. I've got opinions on some of those things.
Yeah. It's funny because like I try to when making an episode, I try to leave like one political-ish thing where we can get ourselves in a lot of hot water. I don't like getting too deep into politics, but you know, this being the pop culture show that it is, you know, sometimes with everything that's been going on, how can you ignore some of the things happening, right? We're not going to be talking about, you know, it's weird. We're in a tough position. We put ourselves in a very tough position on this show. People love what we talk about, so we're going to keep talking about that. And I am having deja vu right now, and it's really fucking weird.
Why is that? Because I put the glasses on?
No, just literally everything that's happening. Me talking, me staring at the screen, me having the second screen off to the side. It's like everything that just happened for the past 20 seconds. Deja vu.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm throwing it at you too because I put my old hat on, my old podcasting hat, my Beastie Boys New York City hat.
Yep.
So I kind of got that retro thing going because lately I've been rocking the Star Wars hats. And yeah, so I've been deliberately messing with you on this Valentine's Day. But I completely agree. I know that we try to stay away from controversial politics, but sometimes that damn stuff keeps on creeping into our pop culture / geek universe, and we just got to be us. I'm sorry if we offend people. I don't think anything that we're saying is offensive, but some people might not agree with it, and you know, it's not any opinions or ideas or any of that expressed in here within this show are just ours and not meant to perturb you, just to give you insight into what we think or discuss.
Yep.
It's particularly tough this week because we have no Tyler. And Tyler is, he's kind of into that stuff.
Yep.
I don't know if you noticed it.
Exactly. It's kind of, it's funny. So Tyler, I hope you're doing well. You're not killing yourself. You are staying busy, but good. So hopefully we can have you back next week. I think he's back at work, and everything kind of is piling up with personal projects, well, side work, real work, and whatnot. So
there's a lot that's lifting in the province of Ontario, depending on where you live. And the government is starting to acknowledge that the COVID situation as it stands right now is under some degree of control. And they're allowing retailers and other businesses to start opening up and have capacity to operate on a larger scale. And as we all know, Tyler works in the comic book industry and has been stuck on curbside pickup for a while. And now it looks like, some of those big jobs and side jobs are all coming at the same time.
Yep.
We don't get a lot of advance notice on this stuff.
Good for him. Good for him keeping busy, keeping the flow running. But yeah, it's just Phil and I this week. Yeah, he'll be back. It's just Phil and I, hopefully, just this week. Yeah. It still feels weird. I don't know what it is about today. Man, I'm tired today. I got to say that. It's been a very long weekend. What am I doing today? I have this show. Yesterday, I edited a podcast, our Royal Rumble special. And by our, I mean mine and Matt's. That's up on the It's Canon podcast feed because it's a free show. We wanted to give it to the masses. We wanted to give it to everyone. So it's out there now. I noticed this morning that there's an issue with Apple. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully when I submit this show, it triggers Apple's refresh, but something's going on there. But the Royal Rumble special is out on Spotify, Google, Amazon, everywhere but Apple right now. Or you can actually go to our website, itscanonpodcast.com, and listen there. So I was working on that, finishing the editing. I was doing some pre-notes for a show I'm doing later, because tonight there is an NXT show, an NXT TakeOver pay-per-view. So I'm going to be watching that with Matt, podcasting about that. But I was doing some like the prep work for that. I have this show going on. I have real work going on. It's been a pretty busy week, but a good week. I can't really complain, in terms of but outside of that, honestly, I've been very heads down. I think even with you and Tyler, I've barely spoken to this week.
Yeah, this has been a light week as far as our group chat, but that's the way we kind of like it though too, because when we get on the show, we get real reactions or our real takes, and sometimes honestly, it takes a while to form an opinion. When you form it with others and then you go to record it, you end up already knowing the talking points, and then it's not a fun conversation to have when you possibly are feeling like, well, they already know this, so I'm just putting it on for the
it's happened to me sometimes where I say something.
We don't do that, so we avoid it.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to the listeners for us talking over each other there. So it happens to me sometimes too, where I'll put something or something's on the chat, we're going to talk about it, and I already know kind of the talking points, so that's when I tune out and stop paying attention. And that's happened a couple times here and there, where it's, again, I'm not trying to be an asshole, I'm not trying to be a douche, but for those listening, I'm literally staring at notes, making sure we're recording, making sure our levels are good, making sure everything is on the technical side working, plus doing the hosting. So sometimes there are moments where I tune out, not by choice.
It's kind of fun. I was thinking about that this morning when I was prepping for the show, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be, number one, like the old days when it was just us two early last year. But number two, it's going to be more difficult for you. And that was my real concern at that point, because I'm like, I know Tyler and I will wind up and go, and you're in complete, I'm going to be the technician mode. You're monitoring levels. We could see you doing things. We could see you doing all the great stuff that you do. And I'm like, oh, great. So now I have to vamp for him.
A little bit. But here I am. I'm ready. So, yeah. What's going on with you, Phil? What's going on in the world of Phil? Like I said, I feel like this is more me and you catching up and having a conversation type of episode because we've barely spoken this week.
Yeah, I know, right? This week, you know what? I ended up watching a lot more TV and movies than I normally do again.
Yep.
A little bit less reading. I don't know what it is. Like, I have every single comic book at my disposal, I feel
All
like.
right. Hold on.
And I
I'm going to
can't be
stop you right
arsed
there.
to-
I'm going to stop you right there because we're going to have this conversation on the podcast. You're like Kevin Smith, for all our listeners to know. Very much like Kevin Smith. And I'm the same way to a certain extent. I get very emotional with certain things that I watch. Like, I make the connection of what I'm watching with something in real life. So if something in real life is mirroring something that I'm watching on the screen, sometimes I get into these very deep thoughts. And Phil's the exact same way. So I've told Phil he is not allowed to watch anything on his own anymore. He needs to pass it by me now.
Yeah, I got into the weeds. I did. You know what? I started this week off by hitting Netflix and watching Space Sweepers.
Yep.
Now, this thing, I enjoyed it very much so. It's like Cowboy Bebop in live action.
And it's Korean, Japanese.
It's Korean,
Yeah.
Japanese, English. It's a whole mix.
Yeah.
So definitely pop on the subtitles. I'm on my second watch through just for visuals right now because I ended up reading an awful lot of the movie and enjoying it. Like, honestly, it's a fun little movie. I'm not going to proclaim it's the best movie ever or anything, but it's definitely different. And I enjoyed that. I was just like, man, Netflix really nailed it. I think it was on the top 10. It was trending.
Yeah, it was
last week. So
I saw it,
I was
and
like,
it's one of those things that I wanted to watch, but I just didn't have time. Like, I have the list of things that I'm already watching. You know, yeah,
you got to make time for this. This is honestly for you and probably most of our listeners. I found it was so amazing to see anime in real life done well, and it's still got the anime elements, which I think ultimately will bring the reviewers down on the show because they might not get the context of the source material and how it's being translated per se. So from a purely movie critical standpoint, I don't know that it's going to function very well because the story is a story that's very typical. The universe is very fun. The special effects are really good, in my opinion. And yeah, it's a fun ride. It was really just a literal let's sit down and be entertained. But then I started like looking at what else is on Netflix. And the first place I went was this new one called Outside the Wire, which has the guy from Falcon and Winter Soldier in it.
Ugh,
I guess from a lot
that
of
movie is so
from
bad.
Altered Carbon.
Yeah.
From Altered Carbon, I assume since that show ended, he had Netflix deals to do more, and he did. It wasn't bad. It's
not that good. Tyler and I have talked about this on the show. This is, I think, this is the movie where both Tyler and I said that Anthony Mackie has a bunch of student debt that he has to pay off because he's in so many Netflix original movies right now. It's not even funny. He's becoming the Nicolas Cage of Netflix, where he's in so many things. He's in so many movies. He's also in Miss Baja. He's in a bunch of stuff that have just recently come out. So Tyler and I believe he either owes someone a lot of money or he has a ton of student debt that he has to pay off.
Yeah. It was an action movie, pure and simple. It was just an action movie with a.
To be honest with that movie, I was expecting a lot more. I think it thought it had
the best. Yeah, I think it thought like the people who wrote it thought they had the best idea, like twist in it, and when you watch it, you go, "Oh, that's disappointing."
Yep.
But I think that in the writers' room or whatever, they were like, "Oh, this is so awesome! Nobody will see this coming," and I'm like, "Oh, fuck off!"
That is really, literally what I think. Like the premise, it's not anything new. The story is not anything new. The twists, they're twists, but you see them coming a mile away, which isn't a bad thing. You know, sometimes swerves are too much to the point where they don't make sense. And this is coming from a wrestling fan that grew up watching Vince Russo writing, where everything had to be a swerve, bro. Like everything had to to the detriment of the story that they were telling, because things just stopped making sense. And that's kind of the watching wrestling has really prepared me for this show in a lot of ways, because like, storytelling in general. That's where I'm going with this. And I think that movie is a great example of, all right, we have this innovative thing, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and at the end of the day, the payoff just was not there for that movie. Anyways, what else did you watch?
Well, then I made the mistake. This is where I'm sitting there looking at Netflix original movies in my genre, which are sci-fi, action, that type of thing, and I happen to notice this one with George Clooney, and it's directed by him, and it stars him, and it's called The Midnight Sky. And yeah.
What's this movie about, so our listeners know?
I don't want to ruin it, but in general, at its core, just a light synopsis. It's a guy who's basically got some kind of terminal disease, and the end of the world occurs, which they never quite specifically get to what causes it. But it, as we all know, environmental Armageddon is always creeping up on us. And in this world, at this time, it happens. Yeah. And he is isolated on a station, and how he deals with that and reconciling his history.
Yeah.
So it ended up being, it's a lot more deceptive than that, and I don't want to ruin it. Yeah. So go watch it if you're into emotional sci-fi Armageddon-y movies.
Yeah.
Because this one definitely, I think it's good for Netflix to do this, and I think it's really good for artists or actors or like George Clooney to get the opportunity to direct something that might not get lit by other studios or seen on the scale that it is with Netflix. So I certainly applaud the attempt here and the movie itself. It was just a heavy movie. It just ended up being a lot. I kind of figured it out halfway through.
Yeah.
I actually figured it out right near the beginning, but I let them lead me down the road of disproving what my mind was telling me. And that was okay. That's what movies are meant to do, right? Like, you have to suspend disbelief. You have to suspend your beliefs. You have to go on the journey that they want to take you. And if you're capable of doing that, it ends up being a pretty good experience. It's just emotional.
It is very emotional. Now, I made the same mistake as you, my friend. I watched this movie when it came out, like late last year, early this year. Don't remember exactly what it was. And I was not in a good... I wasn't having a great day. It was the pandemic blues, as I like to call them, which hit from time to time.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm like watching this, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing to myself? And it was one of those days where I'm like completely disconnected, because I try to disconnect one or two days a week now. I'm just like always online, always doing stuff that I just need that for myself, for my sanity. And by disconnecting, I mean like I don't answer emails, I don't answer these assholes, I don't answer anyone. It's very rare.
Yeah.
I know at first you weren't used to it, but now you're like, okay, this is Boris's day off.
Yeah, and you tell us too, and I respect that. And there are days where I'm slow to respond or doing whatever, because it's either been a shit ton day of work at work, or I just don't feel like doing anything online. Like I really just want to chill.
Yeah. So watching,
I get you. I cried a lot at the end of this.
I didn't cry per se. I didn't pull a Kevin Smith or a Phil T, but I it was
ugly man cry.
Ugly man cry. So it was Kevin Smith crying.
Yeah, it wasn't a good. It was just the emotion of the end, which I knew.
Yeah.
I knew that it was coming.
But actually seeing it was like, fuck, I know.
But the empathy for the characters, right? That's really, you get when you do this suspension of belief or disbelief or whatever, and you get into it. Unfortunately, the empathy, the impact, I just feel what those characters are feeling, or what they're wishing you to feel.
Yeah.
That they're feeling. And it's part of the price of doing that, right? When you punch your ticket and go, I'm all in. that's the risk.
Yeah, for sure.
That you're gonna have to deal with the emotional dysfunction or the emotional torture of the characters, which ultimately is a story. And there is good in there.
Yeah,
it's good to feel that way. Just so you can take that into your life and incorporate it in some small way. I would definitely be more cognizant, and have been all the way through my life, about those little things and those family moments now versus taking them for granted when I was younger.
Yeah, you see, that's
ultimately
what
this movie does.
That's one of my biggest regrets. Like, you've known me for what, 12, 13 years now. There was that period where when we first met, you and I were so busy doing our side stuff that, I wasn't around for birthdays. I wasn't around for meals. I wasn't around for stuff. And I always said, hey, whatever, what's one birthday? What's one whatever? And it's something that I kind of regret, especially now because, being on the road, not right now, but with my job being on the road, I've missed so much more. So I feel like I've missed like a chunk of my family's stuff. Luckily I have an awesome family. I have awesome friends for the most part that have accepted that. But, it still sucks sometimes that I've missed so much. But as you know, the past few years, when I do have free time, when I have that sliver of time, I make it for people as much as humanly possible. But it is what it is. Now, Snowpiercer. I wanted to talk about this since it's just you and I. We won't spoil it for Tyler because I know him and his partner are watching, and I don't know exactly where they are.
I think they're on season 1.
Yeah, sounds like it. Because I feel like I've ruined the climax of season 1 for him by accident. But Snowpiercer started off as a show where I told Phil, hey, let's watch this. Let's see what's going on. I explained, hey, I love the graphic novels. I was able to find years ago when after the movie came out, I was able to find some translated versions of the graphic novel because it's originally a French graphic novel, and I really enjoyed the story. And when I saw that TNT was making a show, I'm like, hey, I want to watch this. So Phil and I started watching, and it was kind of like a secondary when we have time to watch thing, right? Now, I'm fucking up Monday night, Tuesday morning watching this shit because season 2 has been so good, so fucking good, that it's must watch when it releases.
I'm not quite to the when it releases thing because one of my big motivators is my Twitter feed. If people are blowing up on Twitter about it, then I have to shut everything down and watch it as soon as possible, much like The Mandalorian. But my Twitter feed is not curtailed to this show.
Well, here's the thing,
Snowpiercer. So I can take it in like Tuesday night at my leisure in the environment that I want to set up for it. This week's episode was hugely emotional.
Yeah.
And it was kind of awkward, I gotta say. Like, the show has matured over its 2 seasons because the first season, it had its ideas and it went about doing its story kind of similar to the movie, but kind of not in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It definitely added a lot more context, depth, and development. But the second season is so character heavy.
Yeah.
That it's shocking to me, like, to see a show mature and as well cast, right? Like Jennifer Connelly, like everybody is just carrying, like, just really carrying the show on their own. They're all very strong people, strong actresses, everybody.
It's such a good show. Now, it's funny. One thing I wanted to bring up, since you brought it up, was the noise on Twitter. Now, remember, and this is something that I found about Twitter, where I find that cable shows in the USA don't get that special attention versus and compared to shows that are on streaming services. So, your WandaVisions, your Mandalorians, your whatever, are going to get a lot more attention than your Snowpiercers, because Snowpiercer in the USA is on TNT. Everywhere else in the world, it's on Netflix, but in the USA, it's on TNT. So I find that like that the noise is a lot less than other shows. Having said that, also
that's because it's on linear TV, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the States, it's linear. With us, it's digital on our platform, and I think digital does gravitate towards the Twitter universe.
Yep. So yeah, Snowpiercer was so good, and it's turned into must watch. And then there's WandaVision. I haven't even asked you what you thought of this week's episode.
I liked it. It's got me guessing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think episode 5 ended on such a note that there was this little inhale on Twitter and the rest of the world and the fans in expectation. And this week, it definitely did its own thing. It definitely said, no, we're maybe not doing what you thought we were doing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do something even weirder.
Yeah.
So honestly, I have thoughts. I'm curious to know where it ultimately goes. These last 2 episodes are going to be just amazing. I'm even avoiding the trailers right now. It's to that point because I just don't want to. I see pictures and I go, okay, so this week is the Halloween episode. All right, we know it's coming. Like you've seen that out of some of the pre-trailers. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to watch the thing. I'm curious. Like, obviously, it's pretty obvious who Agnes is. And I don't even know Wanda and Vision's books too well, but I know enough out of the stuff I've gleaned that I've learned a little bit of the back history of Wanda and the possibilities. And now, at least, the Marvel Universe is talking about mutation. And that's a new thing, too. So,
yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah,
I think it's all going to end up in a fun spot for everybody. And they're promising that the last episode is going to be similar to the last episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. That's the buzz. That there is going to be a person or a reveal that will be on par with Luke.
Yep.
Coming on to The Mandalorian.
And literally, right after this, so right when this season wraps up, not only will we have our special talking and spoiling and predicting what's next in Phase 4 for the MCU with Brad and Lisa from Couple Comic Books Couple Counseling. Can't wait for that episode. But right after this show, being WandaVision, we jump right into Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. Like, that looks definitely more action-based, but who knows? And I read an interesting comment by John Campia on Twitter this week, and he's been pretty open about his, he doesn't really love what Disney is doing and the amount of power that they have.
Yeah.
But he brought up a really good point. He's like, if Disney Plus's standard is Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 and WandaVision, holy shit, look out, Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, if that's a standard for shows, and then you start thinking about it and contextualizing it, and you put Soul in there and all the other, movies that are cross-genre, animated, live action, whatever, the production values on Disney Plus and the adherence to their standards is really, I don't know, forcing the hand of Netflix. Now, Netflix, I'm notorious for trying, preaching about don't watch their shit because they just cancel it unless it's in its second season or something like that. But the movies are actually proven to be pretty good.
Yeah,
I gotta say, and I even picked up on Greenland on Prime Video.
Yeah,
which came out this week. Another apocalyptic movie.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Like, the IP that Disney has is enormous, and that's going to give them that one up. Now, what Disney is doing in terms of budget, essentially giving them borderline movie budget. And then you have the new filming techniques, like the vaults, like things like that, right? So Disney has that one up. So when you talk about IPs, when you talk about like budgets, when you talk about like the overall look and feel, the fact that their shows look like movies is huge. But, I kind of akin this to comic books, where HBO Max, I feel, are going to go in the same direction with some of their DC Extended Universe shows. Like when that Gotham PD show comes out, I fully expect it to be like on par with budget that we're getting for the Batman, for, you know, Joker, those more gritty shows. So I expect the same coming from HBO Max. And then akin Netflix to like your Image Comics, where it's more of your independent publishers, and you know, especially with Netflix, because the one thing that Netflix does, say what you want about Netflix, you get the opportunity with Netflix, right? They might screw you, they might do whatever, but you get stuff greenlit. So it's a great place to start off, and not to say that like Netflix's budgets are lower. It's just, it's different, right? Like you have settled,
there's different production value.
You have settled IP with HBO Max and Disney compared to Netflix. So that's where I was trying to go with that. So but
I would just say like this: competition's good.
Oh, competition is great.
Yeah, when Disney up it like this with their shows, now their content is low in terms of how much they put out, but we all know that that's accelerating fast. We all know that Star is going to start up in March, I believe, or the end of February 23rd in Canada. And all of this stuff is just going to up the content, up the watching time. And it's good for the industry. It's good for Netflix to be, you know, pressured this way. It's good for HBO Max to get this pressure on it. I think it bodes well for the future of entertainment, especially at home, right? Which I think, unfortunately, we're still going to be here for a while. So
yeah. Neither here nor there type thing right now. But yeah, we're going to be home for a little bit longer, especially if you're in the cities like Toronto, New York, etc., LA. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Falcon and Winter Soldier. So that's starting like right after WandaVision. It's literally the week right after. So I'm really looking forward to that. Kind of interested to see where that fits in. But I have a question for you, Phil. What the fuck is going to happen with Black Widow?
That's a good question. I just get this feeling that they're constantly going in and reworking what they have in that movie to make it fit into where they want to go with Phase 4, right? Like it's I just get the feeling that this is going to be an opportunity similar to the Snyder Cut, in that there's going to be a cut of this movie that was originally intended to air in 2020. And then there's the cut that we get in 2021, whenever and however they decide to release it. Yeah. And everything kicks off of that. I think there's lots of changes being made to the Eternals or whatever, all the different, the Immortals, whatever it is. Like, all the different spin-offs, I think, are going to be affected by it. And what they're doing in WandaVision and what they're setting up and what they're positioning for. And it definitely, you know, even with Falcon and Winter Soldier, it doesn't look quite the way I expected it to.
Yeah.
But that being said, we've seen a trailer. And Disney are notorious for putting together a trailer that only contains 1 or 2 episodes worth of content, and then the end of the show is vastly different than the kickoff, right? So we'll see what happens. It's again a great place to be a fan.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you know, look, we're in a new territory here. You know, something like this has never happened before, where you get this world that really is interconnected. Like, say what you want. I know that Marvel TV tried doing this with ABC shows. It started off really strong and then kind of fizzled as the internal war at Marvel was going on at Disney. Kevin Feige eventually won that one, got the TV back. You know, and now we're seeing kind of what Feige had intended with WandaVision, with Falcon Winter Soldier, with all the various shows that are going to be coming out on Disney Plus.
I'm liking where it is. I like where it is. Like it's better than Star Wars in so many ways. It's so much more complex.
The Star Wars world is just starting with Mandalorian, right? Like that is the first
Yeah.
real side project that is in canon. Clone Wars was there, but with Clone Wars being important, then getting canceled, then moving to Netflix, then being canceled, then being revived again on Disney Plus, like it's been back and forth. So it became canon, but originally it really kind of was and wasn't, and like it wasn't canon to the point where it's the building block. So I saw an interesting article earlier this week about how Mandalorian is essentially going to feed into the next trilogy. How it is like the beginning and the core of what's to come in the Star Wars world.
Yeah, they're definitely, when you look at what they've announced and where they're going and what their movie lineup looks like, even with Rogue Squadron being the first movie coming out in 2023.
Yeah.
Patty Jenkins writing the script right now or finishing it up and going to be directing it. It's conceivable, and they said that this is going to take place after the sequel trilogy. Now, with The Mandalorian, we're sandwiched in between the sequel trilogy and the OG trilogy. There's that vast space that we're exploring in this show, but I think that it sets up the building blocks for a post-sequel trilogy really well, because the sequel trilogy really takes place over a very short amount of time in the Star Wars universe. There's not a lot of gap between the movies, so conceivably this is like a month in the Star Wars universe that the Rebellion and the First Order go hammer and tongs like this. So it's definitely it's doing it. It's doing it, and it's fun to see, and it's a great period that we're all familiar with, every fan. Yeah, Rangers and New Republic, or whatever the new one is called, that we all thought was the Gina Carrano type spin-off, we found out this week was in fact not intended to be that they were actually going to announce that show for Cara Dune as its own show, and they canceled it last minute on the investors call. So Kathleen Kennedy never announced it, and they didn't throw the graphic for it because they had the controversy that they were having with Gina.
Yep. And I think
and
this is a
thoughts
perfect
were there.
segue into the news and the first news item.
See?
So that is Gina Carano has been fired by Disney because of comments she made in the past. Now, this opens up a huge can of worms in terms of free speech, in terms of, how conservatives are viewed, how are corporations too powerful? Are they controlling free speech? And what does free speech actually mean? So let's break this down a little bit, Phil, my friend. Here's the thing. Free speech gives you the ability to say something and not get taken out back and thrown into the gulag or out back and shot on a wall. I can go to a public square, yell whatever the fuck I want, and I won't get shot for it by authorities for the most part. Now, this does not allow you, this does not give you the right to spew what you want and expect companies to adhere and and keep you on their payroll. Like if I were to go on this show and go on a rant about something, and I know that people from my work now listen to this show, and if they were to then
be good.
Tell me CEO, guess what? I represent the company, especially, the role that I do. So I would probably be let go.
We all have our NDAs, and they're implied in your contract of employment, right? Where you're not supposed to talk about work stuff, but you can talk about other stuff. That's great. That's freedom of speech. That's your personal pursuits. That's your hobbies. That's whatever, your beliefs, whatever it is. But when those beliefs become the main, I want to be careful with my words here, but Gina was just making a lot of claims. I don't know if you know what she was doing. I do follow her. I had to stop on Twitter.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff wasn't normal. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to like, you're allowed to have beliefs.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to talk about them. But you're also, when you're an actress of her stature, there's a conduct There's a code of conduct that's implied with your employment. And I think that's one of the big things. Like, I know that there's a lot of movie stars that can say or believe things that I don't believe in, but it doesn't matter because they're not beating me about the head with it. And they're getting jobs because they don't parade those beliefs out there or try to force them on people. Okay? But when you're working for a company like Disney, they are all about that image, that public image. That's part of the deal, right? And James Gunn would be a perfect example of where Disney acted too quickly on cancel culture. And then they ended up regretting it. And then they ended up with a mess that they had to fix. Yep. Gina Carrano, I think, is a great example of Disney not pushing the button too fast and letting her prove that the decision to do this was the right thing for them.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's the right thing, all right? I'm saying it's the right thing for Disney.
Yep.
They've made this decision. They can recast her or they can cut her out of the show. They're at a tipping point with the show where I think they've watched a lot of controversial comments erupt out of her Twitter and Instagram feed. And they've seen her delete it. They've seen her try and walk it back. They've obviously indicated to her to stop it. And they've also had the meetings to stop it literally.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to go take a look at some of the things she's talked about. We're going to, all read out the straw that broke the camel's back. We're going to have a bit of a conversation about this. So Gina Carrano, as you mentioned, this isn't one post. She wasn't quote unquote canceled over this one Twitter post. And at that, this happened, last year. This wasn't like it happened last week and Disney acted and that was that. This is an ongoing
it wasn't
thing.
like James Gunn where they went back and a whole bunch of people got stuff from years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
When he was doing stand-up comedy, right? And throwing everything at the frickin' wall.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not here to make excuses for James Gunn. I don't know the complete story. But I know with Gina Carrano, it's been something that's been particularly heavy on her feed in this political move in the States with the election and all of the politics surrounding it.
Here's the thing. She's made fun of mask mandates. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. The official word is, hey, wear a mask. Miss Carrano was making fun of it. Miss Carrano also spread misinformation about voter fraud. She joked about pronoun usage. She, a lot of people on Twitter, and this is the thing, you don't have to like it, but you have to respect it. You know how a lot of people on their Twitter feed put, he, him, she, her, whatever. She put beep, a bop, a beep.
They indicate the pronouns that they want to be addressed as.
Yep. She made fun of this.
That's up to people to do. And it's not something to be made fun of.
She also encouraged businesses and churches to open during the pandemic. So literally going against government mandates. You have someone saying, don't listen to the government, do this instead because your freedom is on the line. You see? So this is the thing. Last week, or this latest post wasn't Carrano's first incident of putting Disney in the spotlight with her opinions. She represents and she's an agent of Disney at this point. So, it's easy to kind of put two and two together and say, does Disney want this from us? This is the thing. Like, it goes back to the PR, the optics of things, right? And yes, I know Disney is not the perfect company. Disney has very shadowy past.
Have their skeletons in the closet.
Yep. So this is kind of what broke the camel's back. She posted an image, and this is what was written on the image. Whether she wrote this or not, this is a retweet or a repost, and it said, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's not a good move.
Yep. Here's the
Likening
thing, like-
yourself too. Nazi Germany Jews. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what
Just
the
because
heck?
this is
And
the thing.
she deleted it.
And that's the
She
point
tried
that I
to
was
walk it
literally
back.
going to say was she deleted it. The fact that she deleted it to me points she knows she was in the wrong.
Oh, yeah.
She knows she crossed the line.
I have this.
Here's the thing, Phil. I have like people do this where they post this stuff, they delete it knowing that it was wrong, but you have that following now. You have the evidence out there, and now you can go turn around and say, "Look, I was wronged. Disney wronged me. Their cancel culture is too much."
Yeah. I have this feeling that at Disney, what was going on was apparently earlier this week, or maybe even last week, Gina Carrano was called into Disney and she apologized. And I think she thought that apology makes everything better. She saved her job. She knew they told her, "We know what's going on. We're giving you this warning. And it's cost you your show. If you value your show, if you want to get right with this, we need to see a change." And then that post goes up.
Yep.
And then she tries to delete it. And then Disney call her and just say, "Hey, you know what? We're done. Sorry, we're done. We've gone ahead. We've told Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau to write you out of The Mandalorian. We're not even bothering with your stuff, and we've got a bunch of really talented people that are eager to work with us in these other areas." And that's up to Disney to do. All right. This isn't about First Amendment rights or freedom of speech or anything like that. It's the simple fact that Disney can choose who they want to and don't want to work with. And if you're becoming a bigger distraction to their brand by your political beliefs and your constant outcries on Twitter in this realm, then like it or not, Disney have a choice here.
Yep. And it's
they
not
exercise that choice.
It's not like she's being canceled everywhere. Less than 24 hours after the news, it was reported that Gina Carano, went on, and she said, "The Daily Wire is helping make one of my dreams to develop and produce my own film come true. I cried out and my prayer was answered. I am sending out a direct message of hope to everyone living in fear of cancellation by the totalitarian mob. I have only just begun using my voice, which is now freer than ever before, and I hope it inspires others to do the same. They can't cancel us if we don't let them." So essentially,
There's going to be more coming on her Twitter, which is basically why I had to click the unfollow.
Yeah.
I can't. There was times where I was looking at it and I didn't know the full context of what was going on. I look at her as Cara Dune, all right? And maybe a little bit of the Deadpool mean girl type thing. And I'm not really invested in her too much as a person. I'm watching it and going, she's doing well with this character. But then I'm looking at her Twitter feed and I'm like, she's like one day she's all like, "Let's all join Parler." And I'm like, but that's kind of into that other end of the political spectrum that I didn't know. And then it just got worse and worse for me. I had to just bury her deeper and deeper into my content into my feed until now I'm just like, no, I just don't even want to hear what's going on, especially after that Instagram post that she made. Not down with any of that at all, personally.
I'm all for you saying and believing whatever you want. I have friends who are very right-wing conservative, and I'm, more on the liberal side, and we get along well. We respect each other. We have conversations.
Yep.
I'm cool with that.
You can have those beliefs.
Yeah, but when you start making some more extremist views, start making fun of things going on in the world like mask mandates, telling people to not listen to the government, spreading misinformation. That's where, that's when I start to kind of say, look, come on, take a step back.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reevaluate things. If she was just a Trump supporter, just a right-wing person, said, look, I don't fully believe and acknowledge everything the government is saying about COVID, but it's the government, you should listen to them, we'll see where this takes us, that's cool. But she is telling you to openly go against mandates, to openly not listen, to spread misinformation. That's where I kind of start to draw the line of where I respect you and where I need to say, look, that's no mas, right? So, this isn't about this isn't about.
I'll take it a step further. All right, it doesn't even matter. She can have those beliefs. She can even tweet them. I can choose to follow or unfollow her. But Disney made the choice to unfollow her professionally.
There you go.
They severed the link, right? And that's it. We all have to deal with that. Now, she can believe whatever she wants. She can say whatever she wants. But, that's the way it is. Unfortunately.
I think that's the perfect way.
Yeah.
Disney chose to unfollow her. So that's that. All right, we're going to move on. Cyberpunk 2077 dev CD Projekt Red was hacked. Perpetrators demands ransom. And apparently the code was sold to an unknown party in the dark web for an unknown amount. What do you
I heard they were asking for $1 million.
Yep.
And as well, I was doing some research on this. And it looks like there was a whole bunch of accounting information taken and a whole bunch of employee information taken and a whole bunch of dirt on the company taken, which is also up for sale along with the source code. Or the exchange went something like this. CD Projekt Red kind of disclosed that, hey, we had shit stolen. We've got backups. We had some drives encrypted. We've got backups. We are restoring said backups. Okay, fine. But the information was taken. All right. And we've been contacted about a ransom kind of payment system. We're not participating in it. So, that being said, we're letting you know this information may be coming out. And we've made the decision as a company that we're just going to deal with it when and if.
Yeah. CD Projekt Red on February 9th sent out a tweet saying to our ex-employees, as of this moment, we don't possess evidence that any of your personal data was accessed. However, we still recommend caution. If you have questions, please write to our privacy team, blah, 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 blah. So, we don't know exactly what was taken. We don't know to what extent this breach goes. But, I think that, again, this is a company who just keeps getting shat on by the media. And now, obviously, they're a target to hackers.
Yep. It's I don't even, I guess I'm naive in the fact that I don't even know what you do with the source code other than maybe fix the game. It's just, there's comedy around it, but the game isn't that broken right now. It's rather playable. I was playing it last night on Stadia, and it seems like, I'm just stuck in a mission. I don't know what they're going to do with the code if they start modding it. What? It's interesting to me to watch. I hope that CD Projekt Red doesn't get too bogged down in bullcrap, but I feel like this is a lot of drama and a lot of people, a lot of eyes on it, and it's kind of sad.
What gets to me
doesn't end up ruining people's lives.
What gets to me are the keyboard warriors who are like, yeah, they deserve this. No, they didn't. No matter what this company did, they don't deserve to have their source code stolen. They don't deserve to have employees' personal information possibly being put out there. They don't deserve this. If I was a developer, I'm not the one who made decisions. I'm not the one who, decided to put a quote-unquote broken game out there. It's just it's again something that I want to talk about, and that's kind of like the negativity and the spotlight and the bad PR that this game and company got. It's just growing and growing to the point where people think that this is cool, that this is hilarious, that this is whatever. No, this is not. This is not good. The fact that hackers can get into any company is not a good thing. The fact, what if this was your credit card company? Are you going to be laughing then?
Well, I know I won't. I'm in lockstep with you. I don't see the thrill nor the glory that potentially comes from this. I don't, I feel like old man Phil here, which, is kind of my shtick, but I just don't get it. I can see how some targets in hacking are targets because of who they are or what they are, but I know that a lot of companies have to take this very, very seriously. And I don't doubt that CD Projekt Red was taking those steps, but all it takes is one employee to open the wrong email or click the wrong link and exploits happen. It's a really sad situation. It's too bad that people are targeting this company with those skills because, I just don't see the fun in beating up an already beat up company who really didn't do anything too wrong. Like you brought up, everybody in that company worked their asses off to make the best game possible. It's up to management to make sure that the best game possible is what was delivered, and they fell short on a couple of the platforms for sure.
Yep.
So,
all right.
They're trying to fix it. They'll get there, people.
Exactly. And we will talk about this a lot more soon. We're still following this story very closely. And
there should be the February patch soon.
Yep. All right. So
that'll give us a talk.
Phil, movie theaters are crying foul again. The movie theaters are claiming that something else now will kill the theater industry, and not any of their own decisions, not their lack of innovation, not their insanity, but now the minimum wage increase that is proposed in the USA will kill the movie theater industry. So Democrats in Congress are looking to bump the minimum wage up nationwide to $15 an hour by 2025. So every year, this is going to go up little by little. They're going to evaluate, make sure that it works, and then by 2025, it's going to be $15 an hour. This would be the first time the minimum wage has increased since 2009, which saw the minimum wage get a boost from $6.55 an hour to $7.25 an hour. Several states, including California and Illinois, are on track to meet that pledge in the 4-year time frame. So again, this is a very state-to-state thing. But federally, they want the minimum wage to be $15 an hour, and within your state, you can do whatever the hell you want. So AMC and other theaters are saying, nah, this is too much. This is too much.
We're already buying $17 popcorn. Come on.
Yep.
This is a company or a set of companies. I won't say AMC specifically, but I will say theater companies overall. The amount of markup that they perform at the candy counter, at the snack counter. All right, literally they're taking 10 cents a pop and charging you, $5 to $7 for a tub of that. And then there's your popcorn, which is another $10 to $15 for literally pennies of product. It's popped corn air. Like, it really is, like, butter is probably the most substantive thing that they put on that, and that isn't even real. It's butter-like, all right? It's oil. So when you look at all this stuff cynically, it's like, hey, you know what I haven't done? Bought a $5 bag of M&Ms. It's literally everything there is marking up to the point, and then you're telling me that you can't pay an employee a living wage for working midnights and all kinds of weird effed up hours.
Yep.
And especially kids in school and whatnot. When I go to the movie theater, I see a lot of entry level positions being filled by students and people who are trying to do a full time in school or whatever their situation may be, pick up a little bit extra cash. And you're telling me you can't afford to pay them a living wage?
Phil,
and
this
even
is why.
then, I would debate $15 isn't even a living wage.
And this is why I brought up the past. This would be the first increase to the minimum wage since 2009, 12 years ago, where it went from $6.55 to $7.25. But everything else is going up in price. So, we can talk about inflation, we can talk about this and that, but at the end of the day, this is the first increase federally in 11 years. 11 years. And we're saying, and now some executives are trying to say that this
corporations.
Some people are saying this is a disservice to unskilled employees who might find themselves in lucrative roles. Lucrative? $15 an hour is not lucrative. It's not. It's barely living. This is the exact quote.
Have you bought groceries lately?
This is the exact quote. I think it's a real disservice to the young, unskilled employee when we start pricing them out of the market, said Russell Allen, president of Allen Theaters in Las Cruces, New Mexico. We've hired 16-year-old kids that don't know what a broom is, much less how to use it. So then, how about...
But that gives you the right to exploit them like slaves?
Exactly.
Like, I just don't get it because, we look at the world that we live in, you see CEOs, and they're making $8,000 an hour or some shit like that. Like, it literally breaks out to these multi-million-dollar deals for the guys at the top. And the people who are making the company move and work and function are getting paid a subhuman wage. Because even when you're talking about going from $6 whatever to $7 in 2009, that's embarrassing by those standards. Like, avoiding inflation, which to me is always a big joke because every time I hear the word inflation mentioned in the political spectrum or in the economic spectrum, it's always an argument that inflation is barely happening. However, every time I go to the grocery store, where is my measure of inflation? And I go, hey, look, $200 of groceries now is an easy thing to do. Yep. It used to be an oddity. It used to be that was a month's worth of groceries. Now you can go and you can barely put anything in your basket and you're at $50+.
Yep.
Like the price of things is insane. And to be fair, I don't know how the economics of the States is, if the supermarket markups are different, or maybe it's because things have to be shipped up here or kept at cold storage, which increases the price. But by and large, I know from my experience, when I went down to the States in the 2000s doing all my soccer travel, I found that the grocery store wasn't any cheaper in the States.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying groceries, in some cases, were more expensive in the States just because of the dollar trade-off. So things weren't magically cheap down there at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anybody could live on, God forbid, $7 an hour. And you wonder why the economies of our worlds are such that they are, where everybody's running around at that level of employment with 2 or 3 jobs trying to manage. Mm-hmm. They never get a break.
Yep.
They never get a weekend. They never get vacation. All they have to do, all they're programmed to do, is continually hustle for money.
Yep. And then you have...
And that's unbelievable.
Yep. And then you have major corporations like Tim Hortons here in Canada, who, when the minimum wage increases, they cut hours, they do whatever they can in order to keep you at the minimum of the minimum of the minimum with the less amount of investment towards their employees. So, I understand that I see both sides of the argument. I don't accept the side saying, that this is a disservice to certain people. People need to work. People need to go to training and become something bigger. But let's take a look at the normal plight of a 16 to 21-year-old. They're working these minimum wage jobs. They're trying to go to school. School in the States is insane. They may or may not get financial assistance. So how am I, going to make myself, going to become that engineer, going to put myself through medical school on these minimum wage jobs without financial assistance, without any of this? And even if I did get financial assistance, the hole that I'm building myself at that young age is so large that I'm going to be out of just school debt in my 30s, 40s.
it's it's inexcusable. I'm not a big fan of this top down structure that's being constantly thrown at us, where it's like, well, the CEO can make millions in years. In a year, he can make $10 million, or she. And these bottom employees are just expected, well, if you want what I got, you better go and earn it.
Yeah. And I think
they're never going to get there.
I think our listeners are very lucky Tyler is not here.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I was thinking that when we were talking about this, because I'm like, I'm sure Tyler could talk it both ways.
Yeah.
Not that he would believe. I think that he's firmly in our empathetic camp.
Oh, I just mean that he would
people.
be like very passionate.
But he would be very pointed. We're being very general. I'm not pulling up the CEO earnings for the top 10 companies or anything like that. It's just hard for me to fathom that argument. And there's more than enough money to share the wealth in companies. And I wish that they do it more, especially towards things like giving people a living wage. Yeah. And again, I'll say $15 an hour ain't no fucking living wage. That's you're having to work 2 jobs instead of 3. So maybe you get a couple minutes to yourself.
Yep.
It's just sad to see. It really is.
All right. So Stadia. What do you want to talk about Stadia? What's going on in the world of Stadia, Phil?
Not been a good week in Stadia week. It has and it hasn't.
Yeah.
All right. So we crowdfunded a game called Sky Climbers or something. And well, the Stadia group did.
I just love. Stadia. I fucking love how you always say we. I love it.
Well, I'm identifying with the group really well because it's a lot of my Twitter feed. So I look at the royal we because I've committed myself to being in that group. So yes, unfortunately I'm not really into this game, so I didn't fund the Kickstarter. But they've noticed that a lot of the love has come from Stadia fans. And they're hopefully going to be publishing to that platform first with this game, or I don't even know the full situation because it didn't interest me. But there was somebody posted some viral video of them throwing their Stadia controller in the garbage. I'm not going to say who. And what ended up happening was one of the high ups at Google Stadia was really upset about this video. And we all started posting pictures of our Stadia controllers to let them, like Google, know that we actually value the service and the games. So it's actually, it's given a lot of attention to the community, and we're sticking together. The community is sticking together. It's just been a tough couple weeks because everybody's wanting to write that story that says Stadia is dead, when really it's far from it. They've released more games this week. I think we got Little Nightmares 2 on first day of launch, free. So the first day the game goes live for all the platforms, we get on Stadia for free. I actually played it for a little bit this week. It's not really my type of game, but damn, was it ever cute, and the graphics are great. So I'm still invested in it. I'm still going forward, full gung-ho. I like the 60 frames per second. I like the 4K resolution. I don't understand completely why my Ubisoft games don't come in 4K, but everything else is, except for, well, again, Cyberpunk, but that's a known issue that they're working on. So add it to the list.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stadia's been good, man. It's just shit's there. Stuff works.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And I don't have to be honest, last night I played Forza 4 with a friend of mine. And he's going through some tough times. And we wanted to just get together and play some video games back in the OG days type thing. And holy shit, I had to wait, 10 minutes for a multi-gigabyte patch to come in. And then just the finagling with the noise coming out of the Xbox, hearing it overheating, access times, load times, hard drive time. Like, I'm just like, holy shit, there's a lot of time playing games spent not playing.
Yep.
In this system, in this architecture, which is why the next gen stuff is great, with the PS5 and the Xbox One X and all this stuff where we're getting fast times. But Stadia is in that category. just because of the cloud.
Yeah.
I don't have to go through load times. I don't have to go through patches. I don't have to do any of that.
Yep.
And it's a convenience thing for me. I love it. I'm really enjoying it.
Right. And something that we want to talk about, and I think that we're going to really be talking about this in the future in our Stadia special, and that's the fact that, you know, when you take a look at the certain articles from major gaming pop culture websites, they're very negative to Stadia.
Yes.
And it's never about Stadia and the service they provide. It's about the concept. It's about the fact that it's Google. It's about the fact that, you know, oh, this game isn't coming out for Stadia. But they never report on the positives of Stadia. They never report on the AAA games coming out for Stadia. They always talk about the negatives. They always say, oh, it's Google. It's going to be killed.
There's no love. There's absolutely no love in the Stadia reviewer / coverage universe.
Yep.
And that is something that we did tweet about yesterday or this week, that where the hell are the journalists when there's good news?
Yep.
Right? Like I tweeted IGN and whatnot, because I was just like, well, they're not going to make a story about anything positive hitting Stadia, because all they do is dump on things.
Well,
That's
it's going to go against
content.
their
That's how
own
they get their
narrative of Stadia. That particular website's narrative is that Stadia is dead on arrival. So they will never report anything positive or contrary to that view of theirs. Which,
It's true.
this is essentially what our special is going to be. It's about media coverage and how the media coverage and, you know, these major websites, you know, can make or break something before the public even sees it, before the public even tries it. And this goes back to a point that we were talking about on this show a few weeks ago, and that is about, you know, reviewing for the sake of actually reviewing something without incentives, without the fear of being blacklisted, with, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot more to come here, but, you know, listeners, go out, do your own research on Stadia, try it out if you can, let us know what you think, you know, make your own decision.
Let me tell you a tale. Originally, all right, I have been guilty of this in the past on this podcast. We have brought up Stadia, and I've laughed about it. We have brought up Stadia, and I said, that doesn't work. We have brought up Stadia, and I've said, and all three of its players, right? Like, I've made that joke at Stadia's expense and their players, their fan base. Boris pushed me to get Cyberpunk 2077 on Stadia. I could not see a logical reason why not to. Stadia had already supplied me with a free controller and a free Chromecast, and they were promising to give me another one with the purchase of said video game. So it's a minimal investment. I can play that game no matter what without any monthly subscription fee on Stadia. Okay? I try it, and that's when I learned all the stuff that I had believed was wrong. And where did I learn all of those uninformed ideas? Through mainstream media constantly dumping on Stadia. It had a botched launch. Oh my gosh, you mean like Sony and Microsoft are doing right now with their next-gen consoles? Because that's a freaking mess. But everybody just keeps on talking about how great those consoles are, because they're great, because they actually go through and play them. Right? What's happening to Stadia is they're getting railroaded right out of the gate because it's Google. And that's it. They made a decision not to invest in AAA games because AAA games take years to make. So I get it. We are in a dangerous position right now because it is Google. I get that. I empathize with our listeners. I want to let you all know that we are a little bit shaken over the news, but it makes sense. And Stadia are going forward committing to hundreds of titles, 100 titles for 2021. That was their commitment this week. So they're making that happen. We're getting tons of new games every week. There's new games being announced. There's new content coming. So it's just a fallacy. It really is an agenda by reviewers where they don't even. I'm disappointed in a lot of the reviewers that I pay attention to won't even acknowledge Stadia because they have that same bias that I had. And I'm trying to tell them in the comments, hey, look, just give it a chance. What do you have to lose?
Here's the thing, though. Some reviewers won't touch it because Google won't send them a controller. They won't give them free access. They won't do this. They won't do that. That's why, Phil. It goes back. It's funny. It goes back to Tyler's point and the bias and the incentives. I am not going to review something unless I get it for free. Then I just don't understand that. Now, here's the last point before we move on, and that is the fact that if we had the internet community as it is today, back when Microsoft or Sony announced that they would be building their own console, those consoles would be DOA.
Yep. The environment would be completely set up against them. Yeah. I've seen that comparison with Stadia and Xbox, Stadia and PlayStation. Exactly that. It's a funny world, but you know what? I will back up ACG, that reviewer that I do watch who doesn't really participate in Stadia stuff, but does everything else. Anything that he gets for free by the developer, he gives it away.
Yep.
All right. So his motto is, if I get it free from the developer, I'm going to the store, I'm buying a physical copy, and I'm going to give it to one of my listeners. But
here's the thing with that, though. That is still an incentive. That's still an incentive for him. He's getting something from developers, and that is going to prompt him then to go and buy it. He's not doing this before. He's not going out and buying it regardless. You know what I mean?
Well, because he gets advanced codes.
Yeah, but,
so he can have his review ready for the day
but
of
that's
or
prompting
the week
him
of.
To go out and buy it. It's still an incentive at the core of it.
But at the same time, there's stuff that he reviews horribly. There's stuff that he hates. And he always makes a point of it. I'm going to go out and buy this game and give it away. And I hope that somebody who gets it actually likes the game. But he's just like, I just don't want any skin in the game.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to be seen that way. He's like, if a developer sends me a code, that's great. But if they don't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
He's still going to review the game if he wants to play it.
Well,
and there will be games that he skips.
Of course, but there's still some inception towards him and the way that he does stuff. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that it's there.
I'm just saying the transparency level, I appreciate the disclosure.
Yep.
I appreciate the attempt. You're right in a very cynical way. You are correct. But I appreciate his transparency on that front because it has value to me.
Yeah.
It lends him authenticity from my point of view. But that might not be everybody else's point of view. And that's too.
This is an argument that I'm hearing more and more and more and more. And this is one kind of thing the one comment that I've heard about our show. And that's that, we have, to a certain extent, we have an incentive for clicks, for listens, for whatever. But we talk about what we talk because we want to talk about it. We've made friends with certain companies, but we don't really go out of our way to talk about anything in particular. This is all part of the greater plan, and we will eventually expand. But, one thing that I've always been told about our show is that they like the grassroots nature of it. So, that's something that I want to explore more of and see kind of what's going on, because we've talked about it on this show with reviewers. And and that's kind of like the incentives and the payoffs and the whatever, and it's essentially a very, very broken market at this point to get an honest opinion about something, because a lot of people are afraid of putting up a bad review because a certain website might not publish you anymore. You might get blacklisted by the devs. You might, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I've seen this firsthand.
Yeah. I have too. Anyways. I've seen Ubisoft cut people out and go, we're not sending you any more information. We're not sending you any more pre-releases. We're not doing anything with you because we didn't like your review of Far Cry.
Yeah.
Primal.
Exactly.
Whatever. Like, shit. Not everything goes great. Some projects are aimed at completely different audiences than when they land at you. And as well, games change constantly after they're released. So a game that I might hate today might end up being something that I play all the way to the end in a month or 2 months or a year's time. and go, holy shit, I really missed that gem.
Yeah.
Like, they really improved this.
And here's the thing. At the end of the day, as we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're seeing records break, there's a lot of eyes and attention on reviewers and content creators and things like that. And that is because, again, the numbers are breaking records. So this year's Steam concurrent player count broke the record again. And that's 26 million concurrent players at one given time.
Yeah, that's 26 million people that were logged into Steam at one time. It wasn't concurrent players. I think it was actually...
I meant concurrent
9
users
million.
online.
Yeah, it was concurrent users, and it was like 9 million people were playing games. So that's a lot of other people either chatting in Steam or doing whatever it is that they do in Steam, right? I don't know how GeForce Now stacks up in those stats as well, because as that service grows, it's you're linking your Steam account and you're using your Steam key or your credit for the game to play it on another server. So it's an interesting thing that's going on. And yeah, pandemic world, man, crazy numbers. And you have to think about the fact that not only is that happening in Steam, you also have all the people playing PlayStation stuff and all the people playing Xbox stuff that aren't even logging into Steam that are gaming, right? At the same time. It's an insane gate thing that's happening in the world. It's just insane.
Yeah.
And in a good way. Like it's gonna make things grow. It's gonna make things get better. It's gonna make products. Now, Ubisoft this week announced that they're no longer pursuing the AAA game model.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to go to more free-to-play type content and mobile-based content, which I'm so disappointed.
Well, at the same time, though, they're looking at things like Fortnite. They're looking at things like Modern Warfare.
Apex
they're
Legends.
looking at things like, Apex Legend. They're looking at that model and they're saying, hey, if we can get a service that constantly brings in money, that will work better in the long run. So, hey, we know what we're talking about because we talked about this so many times on the show, and this is the future of where a lot of games are going to be going, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you play video games.
For me, it's not my preferred choice.
Not mine either.
I do. I see what their vision is. I can't dispute it, but I don't like it as my personal consumption habit. I'm not big into these multiplayer games or anything like that.
Same.
I like to get my single player on or a co-op game with friends that I know and play them. I think the most fun I've had in a long time is just playing like Borderlands 3 with 2 or 3 people, like 2 or 3 close friends, and just being on the voice chat and hearing the absolute insanity that is that game. Oh, and by the way, last week that studio got sold as well.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be fucked with. It's just an interesting thing that's happening. Like in the games industry overall, these decisions are being announced. I think Ubisoft has through 2022 3 AAA title games coming to market, and then they're abandoning that model.
I wouldn't say abandoning. I think they're
changing course
towards it.
Yes.
Not to say they're not going to make any AAA titles anymore. I still firmly believe.
I think the focus is going to be on this other stuff. And then if they go, hey, look, that isn't working out, they're going to go back to the AAA model. Or they're going to come up with a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Like
monthly.
I think there's,
monthly recurring revenue is the future, whether you like it or not. Services, SaaS. This is all the future. This is all that's coming. This is where we're going. This is where we're at. And this is where we're leaning. Unfortunately or fortunately, again, that's up for debate, but this is where we are going, where we're at, what's going to be in the news. So, it's just crazy right now. And we're trying to follow things as they happen. And again, we have tons of specials lined up. I really need to sit down with you guys and put dates to these specials because we have so much that we want to talk about. And one thing that
things are heating up.
Things are heating up for sure. One thing, thank you to everybody that has listened to the show, that has listened to the interview that I put up earlier this week with Danny Granger Art, because it is one of our best listened to things on the feed. So this has inspired me to, and this is something that I've been wanting to do, and that's putting out the interviews outside of the episodes into their own domain. So that's something that we're going to be doing more of. We have a lot of interviews lined up with musicians, with writers, with content creators, with things like that. And again, people
with beer makers.
With beer makers. It's crazy. So, it is the It's Canon podcast where we talk about anything and everything. So that's what's going to be coming. So a lot more content coming up. I just need to sit down with the guys, with the boys, have a couple of cold ones, and actually put dates to some of this stuff. But, we are going to be pumping out a lot of content in the next little bit. So, Phil, without further ado, I'll let you tell listeners how they can get a hold of us.
Oh, of course, because we're your go-to spot during your pandemic listening itches. You can find us at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts when they get their shit fixed up, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, really anywhere you find podcasts, Amazon, Audible, wherever you do, we're there. And if you like what you hear, please be sure to click the subscribe button so you can get notified when we drop all of these crazy episodes and interviews and whatnot, because it tends to get a little bit hectic, especially if you're a listener in December. You know what that means. So be sure to leave a rate and review as well for our show. We really do appreciate all the time you people spend listening to us natter on about shit on the internet.
Exactly. Oh, man. Another episode done, Phil. Thanks again for joining me. Tyler, I hope we get you back. We are the It's Canon Podcast, the podcast that talks about anything and everything. We talk about all things comics. We talk about all things movies. We talk about all things video games. We talk about all things toys. We talk about all things Lego. We talk about all things Muppets. We talk about all things, anything and everything in the world of pop culture, because it's all in canon. He's Phil. I'm Boris. It's the It's Canon Podcast. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.